It is day 82 since Nancy Guthrie vanished into the desert. Right now, a federal laboratory in Florida is analyzing a single rootless hair found near her front porch, forensic evidence that might finally reveal the identity of the masked man who took her. Extracting genetic material from a hair without a root requires advanced chronological forensic techniques. The analysts rely on specialized sequencing protocols to build a viable profile from compromised cellular structures. Environmental degradation in the desert climate rapidly destroys unprotected biological material. The recovery of this specific sample prior to total cellular breakdown was a critical logistical success. This scientific process represents the most significant breakthrough in a timeline characterized by profound silence. Exactly 43 minutes passed between the camera disabling and the pacemaker signal loss. An 84-year-old woman vanished from a highly secured location during that defined window. The surrounding neighborhood is exceptionally affluent and features comprehensive surveillance infrastructure. The community security grid includes multiple overlapping high-definition cameras with wide-angle lenses. The placement geometry of these recording devices creates an almost impenetrable optical perimeter. Law enforcement confirms no cameras recorded any vehicle entering or leaving during the critical window. The structural layout of the street makes an unseen vehicular approach a statistical anomaly. The central question is how an individual orchestrated this extraction without leaving a vehicular digital footprint. Extracting an adult requires significant logistical planning and an available physical conveyance. Carrying a human body on foot without drawing attention requires extreme environmental control. The suspect successfully navigated a complex residential topography while carrying an incapacitated victim. The weight distribution and required physical exertion make a long-distance pedestrian escape highly improbable. The absence of vehicular telemetry suggests the transport was staged outside the immediate surveillance perimeter. Alternatively, the extraction vehicle was hidden within a localized blind spot that investigators have yet to identify. Every frame of localized security footage has been subjected to rigorous algorithmic analysis. The computational algorithms specifically scan for headlight reflections and anomalous shadow movements. The results continually return a negative confirmation for unrecognized transit vehicles within a 3-mile radius. We are looking at a masterclass in surveillance evasion executed in less than an hour. The physical logistics of moving a medically fragile individual across any distance demand specialized preparation. The perpetrator executed this maneuver within a remarkably narrow window of opportunity. This suggests extensive prior surveillance and an intimate understanding of the local camera coverage zones. The precision of the execution points toward an organized operational strategy rather than a random intrusion. The digital footprint of a modern human is almost impossible to erase completely. We generate continuous data streams through medical devices and household security networks. The suspect attempted to sever these streams through physical interference at the point of entry. The destruction of the optical lens halted the immediate video processing sequence. The synchronization between the home network and the medical device created a secondary timeline. The sudden cessation of the pacemaker telemetry provides a definitive timestamp for her departure. The suspect could not control the automated protocols between the medical hardware and the router. The discrepancy between the camera attack and the pacemaker disconnection creates the 43-minute puzzle. Investigators must determine the exact sequence of physical events that occurred within this undocumented period. Blood splatter analysis provides a partial reconstruction of the kinetic exchange that occurred off-camera. The orientation of the biological evidence suggests a sudden application of blunt physical force. This is Evidence with John. Subscribe now to track the DNA results the moment they are released to the database. For those newly following this investigation, 3 evidentiary facts outline the initial verified timeline. Tommaso Cioni drove Nancy Guthrie to her residence late on January 31st. Law enforcement has verified this transit through localized traffic camera data and neighborhood witness statements. The garage door mechanism was observed closing at 9:48 in the evening. He is definitively the last known individual to maintain visual contact with the victim. His departure marks the beginning of the isolation period for the target location. The interior motion sensors registered no anomalous movements following the activation of the perimeter alarm. The residential environment remained undisturbed for several hours, according to available digital sensor logs. The exterior environment also registered zero thermal anomalies or unauthorized proximity alerts during this initial phase. A masked individual approached the front entry on foot at 1:47 the following morning. Official reports estimate the suspect stands approximately 1 meter 75 in height. The physical gait analysis from the remaining footage indicates an able-bodied adult male. The individual carried a dark 25-liter capacity tactical backpack. The weight distribution of the backpack suggests it contains specialized tools rather than personal effects. The suspect executed a direct and methodical approach toward the main entry surveillance device. The individual demonstrated no hesitation and utilized a physical tool to instantly disable the optical sensor. This deliberate action indicates prior reconnaissance and an understanding of specific security vulnerabilities. The attacker knew exactly where the blind spots were located along the external walkway. Nancy Guthrie is 84 years old and relies heavily on daily prescribed medication protocols. She requires a surgically implanted pacemaker device to continuously regulate her cardiac rhythm. Her extreme physical fragility contrasts sharply with the physical force required for a rapid extraction. The disparity between the calculated approach and the target vulnerability remains a key factor. The perpetrator understood the necessity of blinding the primary optical sensor to control the environment. The disabling of the camera was intended to create an informational void regarding the physical breach. He believed that neutralizing the exterior surveillance would effectively erase his presence from the investigative record. He assumed the digital darkness would provide sufficient cover for the physical removal of the victim. He was mathematically incorrect in that operational assumption. Physical evidence retrieved from the exterior concrete indicates the timeline did not proceed exactly as planned. The assumption of a clean extraction contradicts the forensic reality discovered by the initial response teams. The architectural layout of the front entrance forced a specific trajectory for the physical encounter. The spatial constraints of the porch limited the available defensive maneuvers for the victim. The suspect could neutralize the digital recording but failed to control the biological exchange. Blood on the concrete porch definitively proves the occurrence of a violent physical altercation. A small medical device implanted inside her chest operates as the actual countdown clock for this investigation. Nancy Guthrie requires a surgically implanted pacemaker to continuously regulate her cardiac rhythm. This specific medical hardware monitors her heart rate and rhythmic stability without interruption. The device connects to a bedside transmission unit using localized, low-energy Bluetooth telemetry. The bedside unit relays this vital medical data to healthcare providers automatically and continuously. The transmission utilizes a standard cellular network or a stable residential internet connection. The internal pacemaker and the external transmitter maintain a constant and necessary digital handshake. This handshake requires physical proximity, usually limited to a strict 30-foot physical radius. At exactly 2:30 in the morning, this critical digital connection permanently severed. The cessation of telemetry data provides a precise digital timestamp for her physical displacement. Investigators know the external optical surveillance failed at 1:47 in the morning. The pacemaker telemetry failed exactly 43 minutes after the primary camera died. We must analyze this specific 43-minute window of entirely undocumented time. The suspect disabled the primary optical sensor to deliberately initiate an informational void. He successfully breached the exterior residential perimeter without triggering secondary thermal or motion alarms. The suspect encountered the victim, leading to a violent exchange of physical kinetic energy. The biological evidence deposited on the exterior concrete directly confirms this physical struggle. Former federal investigator Jim Clemente analyzed the specific geometry of this physical blood evidence. The localized spatter orientation suggests a sudden application of significant blunt force trauma. The 84-year-old victim was forcibly incapacitated directly upon the exterior residential threshold. The forensic timeline indicates the suspect did not immediately extract the incapacitated victim. The digital handshake of the medical device remained fully active for over half an hour. The suspect maintained absolute control of the environment and the victim during this period. The required physical exertion to control a medically fragile individual is statistically minimal. The suspect utilized this 43-minute window for an unknown specific operational purpose. He may have searched the interior environment for specific undocumented materials or financial items. He may have required additional time to stage a secondary extraction vehicle safely nearby. He may have been waiting for a specific external signal to proceed with the operation. The telemetry severance at 2:30 indicates the precise moment of physical departure. The victim crossed the 30-foot transmission boundary into the harsh surrounding environment. Moving beyond this perimeter means entering the unforgiving topography of the local open desert. The ambient temperature in this geographic region dropped significantly during the early morning hours. The victim lacked appropriate thermal protection or her required daily pharmaceutical regimen. The physiological stress of this environmental exposure on a cardiac patient is extreme. The suspect orchestrated the movement of a medically compromised human through this difficult terrain. Executing this transit without generating localized vehicular telemetry requires exceptional logistical planning. The suspect carried an incapacitated adult outside the immediate surveillance grid, effectively vanishing. We must evaluate the psychological framework required to execute this highly specific operational sequence. Kidnapping an adult victim generally originates from three primary behavioral motivations evaluated by law enforcement. These motivations include interpersonal violence or financial extortion or severe psychiatric pathology. The initial investigative protocols heavily prioritize the financial extortion hypothesis regarding the missing victim. The Guthrie family received multiple digital communications demanding substantial cryptocurrency payments for her return. These anonymous messages specified untraceable financial transfers in exchange for the safety of the victim. Federal cybercrimes units immediately analyzed the digital signatures of these alleged extortion demands. Investigators quickly identified severe structural anomalies within these anonymous communications originating from encrypted servers. The demands lacked the fundamental evidentiary requirements of any standard hostage negotiation protocol. The perpetrators failed to provide any verifiable proof of life regarding the physical status of the victim. They offered no contemporary photographs or audio recordings confirming her ongoing physical survival. They repeatedly failed to answer established verification questions known exclusively to the immediate family. The Federal Bureau categorized these specific digital communications as opportunistic and fraudulent financial scams. Unrelated threat actors routinely exploit highly publicized missing persons cases for anonymous monetary gain. These individuals monitor national media reports and target vulnerable families using decentralized digital infrastructure. The definitive elimination of the extortion motive severely complicates the established suspect profile. If financial compensation was never the primary objective, the physical risk parameters shift completely. The suspect accepted massive federal law enforcement scrutiny for an alternate, entirely unknown motivation. Crime scene technicians systematically ruled out a standard residential robbery scenario during the initial sweep. Investigators confirmed no high-value assets or sensitive financial documents were removed from the property. The primary and exclusive target of this sophisticated intrusion was the human occupant. This deductive process isolates our focus entirely onto the microscopic physical evidence recovered. The perpetrator executed a highly organized digital blackout utilizing specialized technical knowledge and tools. He successfully neutralized the optical surveillance, but ultimately failed to maintain complete biological containment. The blood pattern on the porch is a confirmed and immutable physical forensic fact. The severed medical telemetry provides an incontrovertible digital timestamp for the exact moment of extraction. We are evaluating an individual who understood complex residential surveillance networks and their vulnerabilities. He engaged in a prolonged physical struggle and controlled the victim for 43 minutes. Analyze these specific timeline discrepancies and share your current hypothesis in the comments below regarding the delay. We must determine what practically occurred before the suspect broke the final transmission perimeter. If the motive was not financial and not material theft, the remaining options are highly concerning. The suspect deliberately targeted a medically compromised individual residing in an isolated geographic environment. The 30-minute window suggests a methodical execution rather than a panicked physical response. He operated within a highly controlled internal timeline despite the massive external operational risks. The complete absence of a recognized extraction vehicle forces a severe reevaluation of the escape trajectory. The suspect either utilized an undetected geographic corridor or possessed authorized residential access. Authorized access implies a pre-existing intimate familiarity with the neighborhood security architecture. This Potential familiarity narrows the statistical pool of capable suspects operating within the region significantly. The entire investigation hinges on the physical evidence abandoned during the violent physical exchange. He left behind biological markers when the extraction encountered unexpected physical resistance at the door. The intersection of medical technology and forensic investigation provides the only reliable ongoing data stream. The pacemaker implanted in Nancy Guthrie utilizes a highly specialized, localized Bluetooth transmission protocol. This protocol operates on a distinct frequency range to aggressively prevent interference from household electronics. The transmission fundamentally requires a direct line of sight or minimal architectural obstruction to function optimally. The bedside receiver acts as a localized node within the broader international medical monitoring network. This specific node requires continuous electrical power and an active residential internet connection to function. Investigators verified that the localized residential power grid remained entirely stable throughout the incident timeline. The internet service provider logs explicitly confirm no localized outages occurred during the early morning hours. Therefore, the permanent cessation of the telemetry signal was not caused by external infrastructural failures. The signal drop was exclusively the physical result of increasing geographic distance between the active devices. The inverse square law dictates that wireless signal strength degrades exponentially as physical distance increases. Receiving node recorded a rapid mathematical degradation of signal strength immediately prior to the total disconnection. This degradation profile practically confirms the transmitter was moving away from the receiver at a steady velocity. A sudden internal device malfunction would register as an instantaneous cessation of all data transmission. The gradual documented degradation proves the device was physically transported out of the operational radius. This specific data point definitively correlates with the primary physical extraction hypothesis established by investigators. The suspect moved the victim away from the primary residential structure exactly at 2:30. The extraction velocity strongly suggests the suspect was carrying the victim rather than forcing her to walk. The severe physical limitations of the 84-year-old victim preclude rapid, unassisted pedestrian movement. The suspect absorbed the physical burden of transport to aggressively maximize his operational extraction speed. This required significant cardiovascular endurance and exceptional physical strength from the unknown perpetrator. The physical profile of the suspect matches the visual data captured by the surviving camera frames. The gait analysis indicates a highly capable individual accustomed to bearing significant tactical weight. The 25-liter backpack observed in the footage likely contained necessary operational control equipment. This equipment may have included specialized physical restraints or chemical agents used to maintain physical control. The utilization of such equipment logically aligns with the silent navigation of the interior residence. The suspect required a reliable mechanism to ensure the victim remained compliant during the interior waiting period. The application of chemical sedatives would accurately explain the absence of a prolonged physical struggle indoors. The violence documented on the exterior porch may have resulted from the sedative wearing off prematurely. The victim regained a level of cognitive consciousness and initiated a sudden physical resistance at the threshold. This resistance forced the suspect to apply blunt force trauma to regain absolute physical control immediately. The operational necessity of this violence indicates a temporary loss of dominance by the suspect. This momentary chaotic exchange generated the biological evidence currently undergoing advanced federal laboratory analysis. The crime scene processing strictly required specialized forensic protocols due to the harsh environmental conditions. The desert climate significantly accelerates the degradation of cellular material exposed to the ambient atmosphere. The ultraviolet radiation during the subsequent daylight hours rapidly destroys exposed nuclear DNA chains. The initial response teams quickly established a strict perimeter to protect the biological evidence from environmental contamination. Crime scene photographers methodically documented the exact spatial relationship between the blood spatter and the architectural features. Technicians carefully utilized specialized chemical reagents to enhance the visibility of latent biological transfers on the concrete. The recovery process prioritized the preservation of the molecular integrity of the collected samples above all else. The blood evidence was immediately transported to a temperature-controlled federal facility for chemical stabilization. The subsequent forensic analysis definitively confirmed the blood originated exclusively from the primary victim. This confirmation logically eliminated the possibility that the suspect was injured during the brief physical altercation. The suspect successfully neutralized the victim without sustaining any biologically significant defensive wounds during the exchange. This indicates a high level of operational proficiency in close quarters physical confrontation and restraint. The suspect remains a highly disciplined individual capable of executing a complex digital and physical breach. He bypassed standard surveillance protocols and controlled an isolated environment for exactly 43 minutes. He neutralized unexpected physical resistance with precise violence and vanished without utilizing a detectable vehicular asset. He successfully achieved this extraction without generating a verifiable financial motive or initiating subsequent communication. The complexity of this entire operation strongly suggests previous professional experience with illicit residential extractions. Law enforcement databases are currently cross-referencing individuals with specialized military or advanced private security training. The intersection of this specific training profile with the localized geographic data represents the primary investigative vector. The final resolution of this case depends entirely on interpreting the data generated during those 43 minutes. The digital darkness orchestrated by the suspect completely failed to erase his physical forensic footprint. The medical hardware provided the precise timestamp, and the kinetic violence provided the necessary biological source material. The intersection of these two factual data points remains the definitive focus of the entire ongoing investigation. The human scalp constantly sheds biological material during routine daily activities, regardless of the environment. A violent physical altercation exponentially increases the volume of this biological transfer between two individuals. Crime scene technicians executed a microscopic sweep of the entire exterior residential threshold following the extraction. They utilized specialized alternating light sources to identify biological anomalies on the concrete surface. According to News Nation reporters, this rigorous forensic protocol yielded a single anomalous hair strand. This specific microscopic filament fundamentally alters the trajectory of the entire ongoing federal response. The suspect utilized dark clothing and a facial mask to maintain strict visual anonymity. He implemented specific physical barriers to prevent the accidental transfer of his cellular material. The kinetic friction of the physical struggle clearly compromised this intended strict biological containment. The recovered sample is formally classified as a rootless hair fragment by the laboratory technicians. Historically, this specific classification of biological evidence provided zero utility for suspect identification. Traditional forensic protocols strictly require an intact follicular tag to successfully extract nuclear DNA. The suspect likely understood these historical limitations regarding trace evidence left at crime scenes. He operated under the assumption that shedding a damaged hair posed zero operational risk. That specific assumption demonstrates a catastrophic misunderstanding of contemporary forensic technological capabilities. The federal laboratory currently processing this evidence utilizes advanced genetic genealogy extraction techniques. Scientists now possess the validated capacity to sequence nuclear DNA directly from the damaged keratin shaft. This specialized chemical process requires exceptional precision to prevent the destruction of fragile genetic material. Analysts utilize proprietary reagents to dissolve the structural proteins while protecting the essential nucleotide sequences. They artificially amplify these microscopic genetic fragments using polymerase chain reaction technology. This amplification process constructs a highly detailed and searchable digital genetic profile of the unknown suspect. Investigators subsequently upload this digital sequence into massive commercial genealogical databases currently available to law enforcement. Advanced computational algorithms cross-reference the suspect profile against millions of voluntary civilian DNA submissions. The system identifies specific chromosomal overlaps measured in centimorgans to establish direct biological relationships. Investigators utilize these calculated genetic distances to construct a comprehensive familial pedigree chart. They systematically eliminate distant relatives through public demographic records and geographic localization data points. This mathematical process gradually isolates the exact individual who deposited that specific hair during the struggle. The federal agents currently possess a highly specific genetic profile and are actively narrowing their focus. The genetic genealogy protocol effectively transforms a microscopic error into a definitive mathematical certainty. The laboratory requires significant operational time to process this vast amount of genetic data accurately. The computational mapping of the family tree demands rigorous independent verification to prevent false positive identifications. The trajectory of this investigation is now permanently locked onto an inescapable biological reality. The digital darkness orchestrated during those 43 minutes cannot protect his cellular structure. Every passing hour allows the automated algorithms to process more genealogical connections within the database. The successful extraction of this specific genetic material elevates the investigative tension to its absolute maximum. The suspect remains physically undetected while his fundamental biological identity is systematically decoded. Please share your analytical perspective regarding the utilization of commercial genealogy databases for suspect identification in the comments below. The application of this specific technology frequently generates intense legal debates among privacy advocates. Your direct engagement helps distribute this critical analysis to a broader audience tracking this ongoing federal case. The focus of the investigative command structure now shifts toward managing this impending biological revelation. Law enforcement must carefully synchronize the genetic identification with the existing digital timeline. We must objectively evaluate the current operational status of the entire massive search effort. The authorities are not projecting an artificial sense of immediate resolution regarding this complex case. The localized geographic search parameters have expanded significantly into the surrounding undeveloped desert environment. This specific terrain presents severe logistical challenges for the coordinated ground recovery teams. The topography consists of rugged elevation changes and deep natural ravines that effectively conceal physical evidence. The extreme thermal fluctuations between daytime radiation and nocturnal cooling rapidly degrade biological signatures. The deployment of specialized cadaver canine units is frequently hampered by these harsh environmental variables. The shifting desert sands can quickly obscure vehicular tire tracks and pedestrian footprint impressions. Aerial surveillance platforms utilizing advanced thermal imaging technology continue to execute systematic grid search patterns. These sustained aviation operations require massive financial resources and complex logistical coordination across multiple agencies. The Guthrie family officially established a $1 million financial reward for verifiable information. This unprecedented financial incentive is explicitly designed to fracture any existing alliances, protecting the primary suspect. Criminal conspiracies frequently disintegrate when the potential financial compensation outweighs the perceived risk of betrayal. The reward parameters strictly require information directly leading to the physical recovery of the victim. This specific legal stipulation prevents the payout of funds for unverified rumors or fraudulent claims. The financial magnitude of this offer exerts immense psychological pressure on anyone possessing peripheral knowledge. An accomplice or a confidant must constantly calculate the risk of another individual claiming the reward first. Despite this massive financial leverage, the investigative tip-line has not generated a definitive geographic location. The silence surrounding her physical whereabouts remains the most disturbing variable in this mathematical equation. The Federal Behavioral Analysis Unit continues to evaluate the psychological profile of the unknown perpetrator. The absolute absence of a verifiable ransom demand severely limits the predictable behavioral models available to investigators. The operational discipline required to maintain this level of concealment indicates a highly methodical personality. He successfully navigated the initial intense media scrutiny without displaying obvious signs of psychological decompensation. The investigation fundamentally revolves around two critical questions that currently lack verifiable answers. The first question concerns the absolute absence of vehicular telemetry entering or exiting the affluent neighborhood. The suspect required a physical conveyance to transport an incapacitated adult across significant geographic distances. The failure of the overlapping surveillance grid to capture this vehicle suggests an unprecedented level of route planning. The second question remains focused entirely on the specific sequence of events during the digital blackout. Exactly 43 minutes elapsed between the camera destruction and the medical telemetry failure. The biological evidence on the porch confirms the occurrence of a sudden and violent physical struggle. The suspect controlled the victim upon the exterior threshold for an extended period before breaking the transmission radius. We must analyze what specific logistical or operational factors dictated this prolonged delay at the primary breach point. These unresolved variables continue to dominate the analytical frameworks of the assigned federal task force. The authorities are methodically assembling a complex puzzle while missing several fundamental structural pieces. The public availability of the impending genetic genealogy results represents the only current path forward. We will continue to monitor the federal laboratory data releases and the ongoing geographic search operations. The meticulous documentation of the digital footprint and the biological evidence remains our primary objective. The reality of this situation demands a strictly analytical approach, free from speculative emotional interference. This case demonstrates the terrifying intersection of advanced digital surveillance and fundamental human vulnerability. The suspect manipulated the technological environment to facilitate the rapid extraction of a fragile target. The resulting absence of verifiable digital data forces investigators to rely entirely on microscopic cellular transfers. The mathematical certainty of the DNA analysis contrasts sharply with the vast emptiness of the physical search grid. The geographic isolation of the surrounding environment severely amplifies the operational difficulty of the recovery phase. The investigative resources deployed are unprecedented, but currently insufficient to overcome the environmental concealment. The tactical precision of the initial extraction continues to dictate the current operational tempo. The silence of the desert environment actively protects the specific location of the missing victim. Nancy Guthrie remains undetected somewhere within that unforgiving topography as the laboratory analysis continues. The digital blind spot is not an accidental system failure, but a meticulously planned tactical execution. This specific case teaches us critical analytical lessons regarding the fundamental vulnerabilities of modern residential security architecture. Homeowners increasingly rely exclusively on wireless internet protocol doorbell cameras for their primary perimeter defense strategy. These consumer-grade devices are exceptionally vulnerable to localized radio frequency jamming technology available on the black market. A suspect equipped with a portable frequency disruptor can instantly neutralize the localized transmission capabilities. The optical sensor continues to receive electrical power but cannot communicate the video packet data to the centralized cloud. This electronic severing creates an artificial recording blackout without ever triggering a traditional physical tampering alarm. Furthermore, physically disabling the exposed optical lens represents a secondary catastrophic failure point for these exterior systems. The attacker efficiently exploited this exact vulnerability by manually blinding the lens with an unknown physical tool. Relying exclusively on single-point exterior cameras provides a dangerous false sense of security against a prepared intruder. Security professionals strongly recommend integrating hardwired closed-circuit television systems to eliminate these specific wireless transmission vulnerabilities. These localized networks should utilize physical Ethernet cables connected directly to an internal, securely housed digital video recorder. Localized physical storage entirely removes the functional dependency on external cloud servers and vulnerable residential wireless network connections. Comprehensive residential security requires multiple overlapping operational layers, including reinforced physical barriers and internal motion detection grids. A singular camera observing the primary threshold is tactically insufficient when facing an organized physical extraction operation. The perpetrator in this federal investigation successfully identified and exploited the single point of failure within the exterior perimeter. He understood that neutralizing the primary visual node would effectively blind the entire exterior surveillance apparatus temporarily. Homeowners must evaluate their security infrastructure through the analytical perspective of a potential hostile intruder. Identifying these specific overlapping vulnerabilities is the fundamental first step in preventing a similar covert residential breach. The absolute failure of the optical network allowed the suspect to control the environment with minimal digital resistance. We must apply these architectural security lessons to prevent future exploitation of these common residential digital vulnerabilities. The analysis of this breach perimeter provides a definitive blueprint for evaluating contemporary personal security protocols. Physical hardening must always complement the installation of digital monitoring equipment to create a truly secure residential environment. We must continuously return our analytical focus to the precise 43 minutes of undocumented chronological time. Exactly between 1:47 and 2:30 in the morning, an 84-year-old woman vanished. She was completely reliant on a surgically implanted pacemaker and daily prescribed medication to maintain fundamental biological stability. The suspect forcefully extracted her from an affluent residential environment featuring extensive, overlapping optical security networks. The biological evidence deposited on the concrete confirms a violent physical encounter occurred directly upon the exterior threshold. He successfully neutralized the digital surveillance network, but failed to completely sanitize the resulting microscopic crime scene. The federal laboratory in Florida currently requires additional operational time to process the recovered genetic material completely. The resulting advanced genealogical profile will eventually identify the individual who orchestrated this highly sophisticated digital blackout. We will systematically cover every verifiable development regarding this ongoing investigation and analyze the forthcoming federal data releases. Subscribe to Evidence with John and activate the notification bell to receive the immediate analytical updates. We will comprehensively dissect the updated forensic timeline the moment the federal authorities announce the identification of the suspect. The advanced processing of the rootless hair represents the only viable trajectory toward resolving this complex operational puzzle. Law enforcement continues to execute massive geographical sweeps across the unforgiving topography of the surrounding desert environment. The $1 million reward remains fully active for any verifiable data leading to a physical recovery. Until that specific DNA sequence yields a definitive mathematical match and a confirmed suspect named Nancy Guthrie remains missing.